And here we go. All right. Got a couple people, looks like already, unless one of those is me. My gosh. Oh, God. All the pearl clutching out there. Yaira #1's coming out, and the Soska Sisters are writing it, and I don't know if I can handle this. Oh, God. People, calm the hell down. I cannot imagine all of this garbage just pouring out on the right hand side of the political spectrum of people who are just basically going apeshit over the fact that these Soska sisters who have this checkered past when it comes to Twitter and when it comes to their work on these films and stuff. It's like, God dang, people, what the hell do you expect from them? I mean, all I'm looking for is a damn good book. And I don't know if I'm going to get it. Of course, we've already seen that there's apparently some art problems that have to do with Yaira. But as far as the writing goes, we don't know how it's going to be. I mean, this is almost like the exact opposite of Eric July. When he first came out with ISOM #1, there was no examples of writing. There was only examples of art. And the art was pretty good. I mean, I know it's that 3D asset bullshit. I don't even care about that. But the art looked decent. And I thought, oh, well, this is decent looking art. I mean, it might have a little bit of issues with the fight choreography, but, it looks pretty good to me. So, but I do need to see how the writing's going to be. And that was the one quality that Eric July was a complete unknown at, was writing. We had no idea how the quality of his writing was going to be. And then I saw a panel on Twitter where Eric July's writing was there, where Santuan was trading words with Avery, and I was like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but at least I'm interested enough in the writing now that I want to see how the writing goes. And so I picked up ISOM #1. Now, of course, I ended up being disappointed by the book, but at least I got some idea of what was going on. So now I had some prior record to go on. Well, the Soska sisters have a prior record to go on. They've done Marvel's Black Widow, No Restraints play. Everybody's probably heard that done to death. And then they had that one short story in Secret Wars Journal. And so I just recently reread both of those items, and they're decent stories. So here we have, this is the irony now. And I know that a lot of people pumped up Chuck Dixon and the fact that Chuck Dixon was going to be writing ALPHACORE #1. Now, the thing is I already know that Chuck Dixon is kind of hit or miss when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I liked his Batman stuff back in the day. At least I think I do. I mean, I have to go back and read a lot of it. I did like Vengeance of Bane. Well, not Vengeance. Was it Vengeance of Bane? Was that where Bane was introduced for the first time? Maybe so. I did like that issue very much. Now, as far as his regular Batman writing and Detective Comics writing, I'm not exactly sure what stories were his, so I couldn't actually tell you whether I cared for him as a writer or not. I do know from having read his attempt with Graham Nolan at doing that Joe Frankenstein book that, he's kind of hit or miss. I consider Joe Frankenstein to be kind of a miss in that regard. And so I looked at that. I looked at ALPHACORE and I thought to myself, well, this could go one way or the other. And as it turned out, it was a mediocre property. But now we've got the Soska sisters coming on board, and they've actually got a couple of decent stories under their belt. I mean, they're not the greatest things since sliced bread. I'm not trying to overpump them up or anything like that. But probably in terms of the writing talent that they've brought to bear so far, when I look back at their prior work, which is admittedly a small amount, there is not that much to their bibliography. But when I've seen their comic book work, I think, okay, well, they can actually write a decent story. They can have layers in their story. They can have, the drama. They can have the action. They can have the subtleties behind the scenes. They can deal with a large cast of characters. They can deal with all sorts of different characters, heroes and villains alike. I mean, No Restraints play was a very wide scale for its for how it handled characters like Captain America and Black Widow, of course, who was the center of the thing. And there are some people who are probably saying, well, that's not the Black Widow I remember. And it's like, of course not. They wrote her as if it was Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow character from the movies, which is noticeable. But at the same time, did anybody really like the Black Widow that much? I don't even. I read Black Widow Epic Collection #1, and that character started off as the worst stereotype imaginable. I mean, she was literally part of a pair called Boris and Natasha. I mean, it was Iron Man was almost himself Moose and Squirrel. It's ridiculous. And then she evolved over time into the Black Widow that we know to this day. And even then, she kept evolving beyond that and evolving beyond that. And, you know, Marvel characters, we don't know who the hell they are anymore. I don't know who Peter Parker is anymore. I don't know who Steve Rogers is anymore. There's been so many writers on these books, and all of these writers have felt the need to put their own particular stamp on the main Marvel characters. And then Marvel does what it always does and finds a way to just like pull the rug out from under you. And all of the stories that you read in the past now mean nothing. And I'm not talking about in the way that DC does. DC, of course, they reboot their universe. They've done it several times just in the last 10 years. What Marvel does is they go and they allow the writer to just take a character and throw him into the weirdest kind of scenario, change the whole thing, just alter the dynamic altogether. And then when that writer's reign is over, he's got to basically leave things in almost the exact same place that the hero was before so that nothing changes. I mean, for God's sakes, you had Peter Parker as part of a multi-million dollar, he had a multi-million dollar business. Peter Parker did. Before Eric July ever had a multi-million dollar business, Peter Parker ran a multi-million dollar business. And now he's back to being a freaking photographer for the Daily Planet again. That is the stupidest thing ever. You had the Fantastic Four change its roster so that it was the Thing and Ms. Marvel, who was a different Ms. Marvel at the time, and the Human Torch, and God, who was the fourth member in those days? I almost want to say it was the Skrull, but I don't think so. I don't remember who the fourth member was. I'd have to go back and look. But then, of course, 30 issues later, they just change it all back again. And then, of course, they did Heroes Reborn, and then they did Heroes Return, and everything changed back again. They even turned Tony Stark into a child. They went and they killed off Tony Stark, and they brought in his alternate Tony Stark child self from a different dimension, and he ran through Marvel's main title as Iron Man for a while. And then they just, everything went into Heroes Reborn and Heroes Return, and he was an adult again, and nobody knows, how anything happened after that. That's what Marvel does. They always return things to the same place that they left off because they don't want to change the dynamic, even when they change practically everything else about the character. And it's so sickening. I'm just so tired of that. So the whole thing about, trying to adhere to a character, to the core of the character, or all that kind of nonsense, Marvel doesn't even do that. I mean, seriously, we've had so many changes and so many, reversions to type that there's no core left to these characters. These characters are just hollow shells that the writers just fill however they want. And so when people complain about the Soskas and they're saying things like, Black Widow, that wasn't the authentic Black Widow or something. It's like, well, what was? What was, really? I don't know. All I know for certain is that they wrote competently. They had a decent story. It wasn't one that particularly grabbed me because, again, I've never really cared that much for Black Widow, and I've never, been much on the whole Madripoor scene where the book was set. But it at least got me into the book far enough that I could follow along with a 5-issue story. It was not terribly complicated what was going on, but at least it sustained the action over 5 issues. It wasn't one of these Brian Michael Bendis things where you have like dead space as people are just having conversations back and forth. He probably did more to ruin comics than anybody alive, even though he brought a lot of decent ideas like Dark Reign and things like that. But man, the vitriol that has been pouring out against the Soska sisters for their past stuff, and I say past stuff, I don't know if it's stuff in the present too. All I know is it's not going to be in the comics, at least as far as I know, because I don't think Eric July would settle for that. If Eric July were to let that kind of stuff slip past him into the comics, that would be one thing. And who knows, maybe he's already let some stuff slip past him into the comics. I put out that video before about that one particular panel in ALPHACORE #1 where it's a little sketchy how that error just kind of segues right into some of the far right neo-Nazi kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it could just be a mistake. But why even let these little mistakes through to the point where people like me can point at those and say, hey, that's not, no. So, part of this, I guess, is going to depend on whether or not he's got competent editors now, except I think that they're the editors. That may not be a good thing, but if they're competent, maybe it will be. I mean, he probably needed them around when Chuck Dixon was writing ALPHACORE #1. Hey, before we accept the script from Chuck, can you give it a look and make sure that everything kind of makes sense? Because holy crap, ALPHACORE #1 had a lot of stuff that didn't make sense. All right, let me catch up with the chat. Maryla 2005. Now I'm interested in watching an unbiased review of their Black Widow run. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to review Black Widow No Restraints play because it's a decent enough story. And here's the thing, Marvel knows how to control their artists and knows how to control their writers to the point where they don't let them make all of the little flubs that independent artists and writers have a tendency to make. So when you have editors on the set who are watching and waiting and controlling and making sure that neither the writers nor the artists have any ability to go way out beyond the pale, then you are actually going to get a good and decent book. So never underestimate the contributions of the editors to those things. I've heard the same thing about prose work as well. There are people who turn in novels and it's like, oh God, this guy can't spell or do punctuation for anything, but he's, a good writer. So we'll just have somebody clean this up for him. And I feel bad for the people who have to go through that kind of crap. But at the same time, that's how they make their money. They're going to go ahead and clean up the manuscripts and push the corrected versions out to the public, and everybody's going to think that the writer is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And my gosh, he can spell. Let's see. True Believer. I liked ALPHACORE, but I need to see what the fallout of the events in that book will be in ALPHACORE too. There needs to be consequences for the destruction we see happen. Yes. And you know what? The consequences need to fall on ALPHACORE because they're the ones who are largely to blame for what happened. I mean, yes, you had Michael Copper and Lillian Ranashi. They both, were the instigators of that. But Brian Solari is the dumbass who put the disc in the machine. I mean, it's like, come on. How much destruction did he cause? Why is there even an ALPHACORE at this point if they're going to cause that much calamity in the system? And what was the purpose of that whole big defense thing in the sky that had cannons going off in every direction? I mean, is that supposed to be? Is that to fight off jets from the United States now that Texas has seceded? I have no idea. Or is that supposed to fend off against demons from some parallel hell dimension or something? Who the heck knows? But the fact that they had this floating fortress up on the sky and the first thing that happens is, here he comes. Oh, yeah, that was some over the top shit right there. True Believer, especially for Solari's stupid decisions. Exactly. I mean, why is he even still on the team? That was just amazing to me. And I don't understand why Valdez isn't more pissed at him than she is, considering that somebody who she probably could have considered a friend in time is dead as the result of that. Maryla 2005, I miss Jim Shooter's draconian editorial hands over Marvel's over properties. And True Believer says you need strong editorial leadership. Yes, that is true. That is why when I saw, what's his name, Eric July, meeting Jim Shooter at the convention, I was like, hire him now. Oh God, yes, I do remember Valiant. And Jim Shooter, he had things so far down that he was, I don't know if anybody noticed this during the first year of Valiant, but he also did this with the New Universe as well. One of the conceits of the New Universe, which was Marvel's attempt to launch a separate brand imprint way back in the day, was that a year of comic book time would be the equivalent of a year of real time, so that the comic book world could go right along with the real world. Now, the problem with that they discovered is that usually left months of gap between adventures, because if you had, say, a 2-issue adventure, well, that uses up 2 of your months. And then what you found out, especially in the first year of like Harbinger and stuff, you had times that, like the kids would wind up getting kidnapped by aliens and put into a induced coma for months. And then they woke up like months later, and that's how all that time in the year was occupied. Otherwise, you just wind up finding out that you're watching maybe one of a dozen adventures they're having throughout the year, and you feel like in Marvel Comics or in DC Comics or anything like that there's more going on. I mean, if Superman is out there every day patrolling Metropolis, and if Batman's out there every day patrolling Gotham City, they're having more than just 12 adventures a year. We're just reading about certain ones of them. But there's got to have been either a lot more stuff going on, or the timeline is just different somehow. And we really don't need to worry about how it goes with the real world. So, I know what Dan DiDio actually wanted to do for DC is to have people's lives extended so that they actually live like 200 to 300 years, and that way, Batman could have actually been, or Bruce Wayne could have actually been fighting crime as Batman for the last 50 to 60 years, or 70 to 100 years, and there wouldn't be any real difference about it because people age so slowly. It's a funny idea, and that actually is something that came to some reduced amount of fruition in the 2-part Generations series that did not turn out to be anything like what I think the actual G5 plans he had for the DC universe were going to turn out to be. But yeah, that was an interesting idea. I don't know how he came up with that. Let's see, Michael Dicha. I've never seen so much hand-wringing over some old R-rated movies, all available on streaming. The Soskas are Hollywood's edgy darlings. See their collabs with Cronenberg and Eli Roth. Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely not in a freaking million years sign up to watch one of their movies. But that has nothing to do with their comics. That doesn't have anything to do with the writing that I've seen them accomplish so far. I mean, so far, the writing that I've seen is at least competent and tolerable. I don't know about the movies, and I'm not going to find out about the movies. I could care less about the movies. I could care less about anything that they've done in the past. All I care about is, what is their comic book work? What are they bringing to the table? What have they already brought to the table that will give me some confidence that when I pick up YAIRA #1, it's not going to suck the way that I feel that ISOM and ALPHACORE have sucked. And I mean, ALPHACORE was mediocre in my opinion. ISOM #1 was mediocre. ISOM #2 is a freaking disaster. And I'm hoping YAIRA #1 is looking like it could potentially be the best of the bunch. But it's going to depend on the art also. And it's going to depend on, how much freedom, I guess, Eric allows the Soska sisters to have on the book. Because one of the things that I really wonder, is whether he gives his creative teams some instruction like, don't say too much. Because there's a lot of times when I felt like in ALPHACORE, there were times when more about the characters could have been revealed, but it was held closer to the vest than it really should have been. Either that, or it was just referred to in more of an obscure way than just flat out telling us, here's what the characters are thinking and feeling. And I just wonder if that's something that he wants the vibe of the Rippaverse to be, where you don't actually go in depth into your characters if you can help it. And I hope that's not the case. I hope it's more the case that, they're going to get free reign to do what it is that they want. With the exception of, putting in stuff that's, like way too twisted for the book. But I mean, it's the Rippaverse, so how dark and deep and dirty do you think it's going to get? I just, who knows? I mean, we'll just have to see. Well, we will have to see, and that's basically the message that people ought to take away from the whole thing is just we're going to have to wait and see. We had to wait and see with ALPHACORE. We had to wait and see with ISOM number 1 and ISOM number 2, and we're going to be waiting to see the same way on this one. Merilith, 2005. How did Eric Larson do that real-time timeline for Savage Dragon? I only heard about it lately that the Savage Dragon in the book is his son already. Yeah, and I don't actually know because I don't keep current with the book. Yeah, I am aware that his son, that in the book, he got married. And yeah, the Savage Dragon, the original Savage Dragon character, got married, had a kid, eventually died, I think. And then his son is now grown up to be the Savage Dragon in his place. Now, how that all transpired, I have no idea. I did read like the original origin of the Savage Dragon. It's just like, wow, you know, that's kind of some warp stuff. I mean, as far as what his previous identity was before he actually landed on Earth in that field of fire. And I'm not going to spoil anything about that, but you may as well pick it up from the omnibuses if you ever get the chance. Dr. Alec Court, the alliance with the Soska Sisters, mark my words, will end up being a PR disaster for Rippa, as if he needs more than he already has. Well, he's already settled things with the ministry, and probably just in the nick of time. I mean, can you imagine if he had not settled his lawsuit already by the time all of this stuff about the Soska sisters had dropped? Oh my God. I mean, if there had been the opportunity for them to take advantage of the fact that, oh, our brand confusion is so bad that now our ministry has actually been associated with the Soska sisters. Oh, crap. That would have probably gotten them some serious money if they haven't gotten some serious money already. Oh, man. But yeah, I can't. All of this stuff that's been coming out, you know, all these videos and the EFAPs of the previous stuff. It's just, you know, let the book come out. If you really believe in giving people a second chance, then let the start of the second chance be right now. Let it be YAIRA number 1. Give it a look. See how it reads. If it reads well, all right. Congratulate them. Congratulate Eric. He's finally got a good book on his hands. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. I mean, I would like to think that now that he's actually paying more attention to the editorial process, which is something that, you know, say on the Comicsgate side, they're still not paying terribly much attention to. I mean, the book that I'm reviewing now, I've got it right here. I've got KOR-DRATH, The Reckoning. And, you know, I look at the credits for it. And let's see. Story and art, Andy Smith. Story and script, Dennis Turner. Color art, Nanjan Jambari. Lettering, Steve Dutro. Cover A, Andy Smith and Dan Lawless. And nope, I don't see any editing credit given here. So there's no editor on the book. And unfortunately, at least as far as the small stuff goes, it shows because you've got punctuation errors. You got, you know, wrong words being used. You got, you know, phrasing that's a little bit off. And so, you know, I was like, why can't you get somebody to actually contribute some sort of editing ability to this book? I mean, if this is something that you're really wanting to put out there as a sign of the kind of quality that Comicsgate can deliver, you can't have these little errors in there. You can't, or else, you know, people are going to walk away thinking, well, you know, what do you expect? The guy's a writer, he's an artist, but, you know, can't expect people to have a full command of the English language or anything like that, or a punctuation rules or all that kind of stuff. No, we're just going to have to, you know, pay our $25 and get what we get. Don't want people to go away with that kind of attitude. That's not the way to do comics. The way to do comics is to try and perfect the things as much as you possibly can. And the only way you can do that is by hiring people who are actually competent with spelling, punctuation, word choice, all those kinds of things. So I'm hoping that at some point, you know, like through the reviews that I'm doing and through the feedback that other people get through their videos, that you will have people enter into the comic book space whose job is basically, you know, to proofread, to, you know, give critiques before these things go to print, and show what it is that how they can improve. Let's see. Dr. ALPHACORE. Hey, doofus Peter Parker does not work for the Daily Planet. Oh, you have him confused with a certain mild planet. All right, Daily Planet, Daily Bugle, same freaking thing. Who knows anymore? It's like, damn it, you know, it was the Daily Bugle that had the black editor-in-chief with Robbie Robertson. Now the Daily Planet does with Lawrence Fishburne, and now who is it now? Wilfred somebody. Oh gosh, yeah, everything's crossing over now. Let's see, Student of God laughs. You need to be a Comicsgate editor. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be. I would. But I just don't know how to get it through to some of these guys that their stuff needs some work. Andrew Rowland, it's so ironic that Comicsgate started from people who have been canceled by the left, now are cancel pigging themselves. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the work, you got to leave the politics out of it. You got to leave, you know, hell, even leave the criminal records out of it. God's sakes. I mean, the worst example you could probably bring up about not caring about the personal life of somebody whose art you enjoy. Well, there's actually two worst examples now, but they're both, you know, intersect in a certain way. Look at Gerard Jones. Gerard Jones got picked up for watching child porn, you know, and now it's like, now DC is actually dropping his work from their omnibuses so that they don't have to pay him royalty checks, I guess. Either that or they just don't want their brand associated with his name. But look, nobody had a problem with his work. Nobody ever had a problem with his work, to my knowledge. I mean, he did come out with some kind of racy stuff. There was that what was it, The Trouble with Girls, which was about a PI named Lester Girls. And it was a little bit on the racy side, but it was in a brand, an imprint that was known for that kind of stuff. It was in Epic Comics. But Gerard Jones had some runs on Green Lantern that were just absolutely epic. I mean, I still have his, I think it was when Hal Jordan and was being drawn by Pat Broderick and written by Gerard Jones, there was a 25-issue run that I still have to this day. And it's one of my favorite runs on Green Lantern. And I'm not going to give that up because of what he did in his personal life. That'd just be stupid. Now, I mean, as far as hiring him for something, you know, I can imagine that he's probably never going to get a job in the comics industry again, largely because, you know, he's not going to be allowed into the conventions. But at the same time, that's also kind of freaking sad because he obviously could probably support himself doing comic book writing, and dude's got to make a living somehow. So, you know, now that he's served his time and now that he's back out in the world, I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that I'm just kind of. I'm very, very big on second chances, and I know that when it comes to the idea of kids being harmed, even if it's, you know, vicariously through watching of materials where kids have been harmed, you know, I'm sketchy on that. But at the same time, I hate for people's talent to go wasted, especially when they use that talent for years and didn't hurt anybody in the usage of it. So, you know, that is what it is. Same thing with Roman Polanski. That's the other guy I was going to mention. Roman Polanski drugged and raped a 15-year-old or something. I think that's what he did. And then he fled to Europe so he would escape prosecution. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to stop watching Chinatown when it's on TV. I'm not going to refuse to watch The Pianist just because of that. And like, no, I can separate the artist from the art. I can separate the director from his movies. I can separate the Soska Sisters and their sketchy stuff that they did in the past from all this. I can separate what James Gunn said on Twitter back in the day from his work on Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, my God, can you imagine how much worse off we would have been if James Gunn had been just permanently fired from Disney for his stuff on Twitter, as opposed to the cast coming and rallying to his support and saying, no, we want James to stay on Guardians of the Galaxy 3. We do not want to lose him for this. Don't let these people's talent go to waste. I mean, at the same time, if somebody can, find Roman Polanski and bring him to ground and throw him in jail where he belongs, that's fine too. But, Gerard Jones, he served his time. I don't know what the conditions of his release are. I mean, I'm assuming he's just free to go and now free to do whatever it is he needs to do. That guy goes and does comics again. Well, I wouldn't actually hold it against DC or Marvel if they chose to hire him again. But yeah, I'd definitely say keep his ass away from conventions. Let's see. People should have. Let's see. John Apocalypse. Wait a minute. True Believer says, it seems common for indie creators to work without an editor. I've seen it for novels too. Yeah, and that's a shame because an editor is almost indispensable. Unless you have the ability to edit yourself and to go and read through and keep reading through your own work. And sometimes you need to read it to somebody else and just say, hey, are you spotting any holes for this? Then that's probably a good thing too. I remember one time when I was reading to a friend of mine my work, and then I'm realizing as I go, oh wait, I need to touch this up. Okay, this line doesn't sound that good. I'm gonna fix that later on. So those are cases where I've found it helpful to go in and at least get someone else's opinion, even if it wasn't something where the friend or person who is listening is telling you tips back to you. You can often by reading the stuff out to someone else and trying to put yourself in their position and saying, okay, now that I'm reading it to someone, now that I'm actually hearing what it's like to be on the receiving end, I realize, okay, now I know that I need this little thing here or that little thing there. So yeah, you can't really escape the need for an editor unless you have that editorial ability yourself. And even then, it's better to have somebody at least be a receptacle for your words and your thoughts and at least listen to your story so that you can kind of at least hear the echo coming back to you of what it is that the reader is receiving. John Apocalypse says, people should have a bias for which writers and artists they prefer. That is part of enjoying art, is learning what you gravitate to naturally. Sure. I mean, yeah, there's certain... Ethan Van Sciver's art is something that I've gravitated to in some ways. I mean, there's some ways in which there's some ways in which I found it noticeably annoying. One of the things that Ethan Van Sciver did on Green Lantern Rebirth that annoyed the living crap out of me was, and this is probably something that people just loved about it. And there was a level on which I loved it, and there was a level on which I hated it, was the fact that he had this the green badge of the Green Lantern Corps was like hovering close to the costume, as opposed to, it just, they're not being that green light, the outline of the Green Lantern there as kind of a badge or signal. That was one of the most annoying things to me. And the reason for that is just because it's never been in the comic before. It's like, all right, when did this start? All right. Are we just starting this because, hey, the artist is a little bored and he wanted to add a little flair to the Green Lantern Corps? Is like, is that why this is happening? That now we've got this, woo, 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 green badge thing going on? Come on. I mean, it was visually compelling, but at the same time, it's like, this has never been on his costume before. When the hell does this happen? And it's just so distracting to the longtime reader looking at that like, all right, fine. I guess that happens now. Let's see. True Believer says, I try to separate the art from the artist, but some things I can't overlook. Child porn is one of them. Can't blame DC for wanting to drop that material. I can blame DC. I absolutely can blame DC because he wrote that at the time that, if he was doing anything sketchy at the time, didn't impact the work. It's the work. That's all it is. I mean, if you can find something within the work where it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that, Aquaman's got his finger up some kid's butt in this panel. If you could find something like that, then yeah, you want to leave that kind of stuff out. But otherwise, why would you leave it out? We're talking about the amalgam issues where Gerard Jones wrote a couple of I don't know what it was. Well, I'm not gonna name them if I can't remember them offhand. But there was nothing wrong with the work. You can't go back to his work and find something wrong with it. And if you can't find something wrong with the work, then the work should stand. I mean, there's no reason to cheat the readers out of a good thing. That would be like telling people, somebody bought the rights to Chinatown and said, well, because Roman Polanski raped that kid, I'm not going to allow Chinatown to be distributed anymore because I wouldn't want any royalties or something from that going back to Roman Polanski. It's like, okay, great. Now you've robbed us with this tremendous movie, one of the best detective stories in all of cinema, because you can't get over the fact of what he did in his personal life. I have no regard for people who are like that. You've got to be able to separate this stuff out. If you can't, then that's your problem. Don't make it everyone else's problem. Andrew Rowland, it just bugs me that a lot of these CG commentators who claim to be Christian are not interested in forgiving the Soska sisters when they say they're changed their ways. I guess we are the left now. Well, I mean, they have to provide evidence. The evidence would be that they don't engage in the kind of stuff that they engaged in before, and maybe they will. But yeah, I mean, if they're not getting a chance, then that's a problem. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that there's anything more to say about that than that. I mean, we have a chance to see with YAIRA #1 what it is they're capable of, how far they're going to go, how far they're going to take things. And I don't know. Let's see. I mean, it can't be any worse than it could always be worse. But I keep thinking it can't be any worse than ISOM #2. That damn thing was just a train wreck. Yeah, and especially when you know that half of the Christians who are talking shit about the Soska sisters, if you listen to any one of their podcasts on a given day, you're going to hear things that's like, that's not very Christian. Oh, that's not very Christian. Oh, man, whoa. Is he really? No, did he say that? Oh, my goodness. Give me a break. Let's see, John Apocalypse, CG is open to everyone as long as EVS keeps the license. But it's also an ever-changing network of sub-networks of artists, writers, and studios, so you have to make that space for yourself in it. Well, everyone except SJWs. Well, if SJWs want to come and play along, then they certainly can. That is healthy, sure. The issue that people have with the Soska sisters is a high suspicion that they're mocking the space for everyone else, though if they prove otherwise, it's one book, isn't it? And then, that is fair. Laughing my ass off. I thought it reflected the level of their. About the Green Lanterns. Yeah, I know. In one of the things that they established, because Jeff Johns mucked with the whole Green Lantern in yellow thing, because back in the day, the rule was that Green Lantern rings could not affect anything yellow. And it was because of an impurity in the central battery that allowed, or that made it possible for their green energy to coalesce. And what Jeff Johns added to the lore was that it was actually the yellow entity of fear, Parallax, who was at the core, who was the impurity in the central power battery. And so this entity that was living in the central power battery got released. And when it was released, then there was no longer that automatic weakness against yellow unless your willpower was not up to standard. So for a rookie who was not yet fully trained to use the green ring and had not yet received his lantern badge, if I remember correctly, if you were a rookie, you still could not affect things that were yellow, because yellow represents the frequency of fear, and that would dissolve the bonds holding the green energy together. But if you were a fully trained Green Lantern and you had the ability to overcome great fear and you were using it and you were, using your will to the fullest extent, then you would have that ability to to basically squeeze it out. That's how I felt when what's his name, Green Arrow, actually used it for the first time to push an arrow out of the ring and then shoot it at somebody. And he was like, "My God, is that what it's like for you every time?" I was like, "Yep." So it must have been like squeezing out a hard turd or something. Let's see. So John Apocalypse says ISOM number 2 had that preview. I mean, oof. Which preview was that? Was that the preview where I don't remember which preview that was. I hope those panels got fixed. Which preview was that? Because I remember there was the one panel that was the full page. It was the only thing that was actually interesting about the preview. It was where Avery was actually fighting those rat creatures or whatever the heck they were in some underground cave. That actually looked decent. I mean, that actually looked like something compelling. Like, oh, well, maybe we're actually going to see something about ISOM's past here. Or maybe we're going to see him fight a bunch of rat creatures. Whichever it is, that at least looked more interesting than anything else that was in there. The only other thing that I saw as far as the preview went was there was one page where it was like Darren, walking or asking somebody to come in or something like that. And it was just boring. And I don't remember what the third page of that was. Oh, Angels of the Renaissance says, "Hello, Mike." "Hello, Biff Bam Boom Comics." "Hey, Mike and Chet. Hey, how you doing?" You have, okay, I got to remember Cody Valiant and Interstella. I remember you guys. Let's see. Okay, so we're pretty much finished up with the chat as it goes. Let me just check real quick and make sure Ethan hasn't started one of his trash casts or something, because God knows he gets enough money off of those things. Righty. Come on. Stick. No, I just see Sticks Hexenhammer, who's doing Super Tuesday. Who else got out there and voted? I didn't. I should have. I mean, I at least wanted to drop one in the bucket for Vivek Ramaswamy, but there's no sense voting for Trump. It's like you already know everybody's going to vote for Trump. And I wanted to see if I could, shove one towards who I hope is going to be his VP pick. And, well, I was too occupied at work and didn't really feel like trying to throw myself together early in the morning to try and see if I could get an early vote in. So, oh well, we all know who it's going to be anyway. It's going to be Trump, and then of course on the Democrat side it's going to be Biden. So I don't see any need to feel like my vote was going to be the swing vote. Not like it could have been back in the day when we were voting on whether Robin would die. I desperately wanted to vote in that opinion poll, because that was if you're not familiar with it, back in the day, Jason Todd, the second Robin, DC basically asked, "Hey, should we kill this kid? We're going to basically throw him into an exploding warehouse with the Joker. Or, do you want him to die or not?" And by a margin of about, I think it was like 17,000 people voted, or maybe it was 12,000, something like that. But thousands of people voted by phone. There was a telephone number in some of the copies of Batman 427, and out of those thousands of people who voted, over 10,000 people, it was a decision of 72 votes to kill Robin. And I would have made that 71. I did not want to see Jason Todd die. And the reason is because I had just gotten back into Batman comics at the time, and I didn't want to see the status quo shaken up like that. So that was a vote where I could have made, almost close to a difference there. But other than that, so anyway, I'm probably going to go ahead and bow out now. The whole Soska Sisters thing, we're just going to have to wait until YAIRA number 1 comes out and see how everything goes, and then we'll know how to judge it then. I mean, who knows? You might not only might you have another $1 million campaign, because there's been a lot of hype about Yaira. At least there was in the beginning. I'm still a little surprised that he came out with ALPHACORE first, but I guess that was just because maybe he could get squeeze a story out of Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett faster than he could out of the Soskas and Deborah Carey-Ta. But it would be nice. And here's the one thing that I am hoping. I do have one hope for Yaira #1. I hope Yaira #1 explains the 2 weeks that happened between the start of ISOM #1 and Avery's encounter with Yaira in the middle of ISOM #1. I hope the story goes into that 2-week period, because otherwise there was no freaking reason to have a 2 weeks earlier as opposed to a, just a same day kind of thing. It's possible that it's going to cover that amount of ground, but I don't know. I mean, the story does already seem to involve Solari, unless, maybe that's, oh gosh. I'm trying to think if there's a good way. Well, there's just too little known about what the story is going to be. And, do you feel like there's just too much that's left out of what the campaign holds at this point? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to feel excited about this stuff anymore. I want to. I mean, I know that Rippaverse stuff is like, of course, that definitely gets me more views on my channel than anything else that I've been covering. I mean, the KOR-DRATH, the Reckoning stuff that I was just showing you. I mean, I got like 150 views on the video for that, but I don't think enough people are like interested in that to really hear my opinion on it. So when it comes to the Rippaverse stuff, unfortunately, that is where the attention is being drawn. I mean, that's one thing you can say, I guess, that's positive about what Eric's done so far, is that because people have been following the Rippaverse and he's got so many fans and stuff, that's where all the action and attention and energy seems to be drawn. It's like, if you're not putting out something that is regarding a Rippaverse property in some way, shape, or form, then you're missing the big story. I mean, he's the top news. Even if that news is scorn, even if that news is, oh, your product is crap and all that kind of stuff, and all of the EFAP videos and the videos that are just basically trashing him or watching other people trashing him. You've got this wild kind of circle jerk going on among the Comicsgate sphere, where people are just watching videos of each other taking Eric July to task and not realizing he's the one who's like getting all the energy from this. And I'm just like, well, you can always try and up your own game on your own comics, because, heaven knows, in some ways, at least from the offerings that I've seen so far, more attention is needed. But again, I've only gotten like partway through Cyberfrog Ret Planet, and I've gotten partway through KOR-DRATH, the Reckoning, and soon I hopefully will be getting John Malin's Graveyard Shift volumes 1 through 4 and the 4 supplementals, and then Shane Davis's Inglorious Rex, and once both volumes of that and the 2 supplementals. And once I'm done with those, if there's nothing else on the board, then I'll probably go after Rini Strachowski's Fiendish and see where she is in that series, and see if those books are any good. So I'm trying to make the rounds, and at some point I'll probably do a Marvel or a DC thing here or there. But with Marvel or DC, it's more difficult because they actually have editors, and the editors are going to find the mistakes and correct the mistakes that I would normally nitpick out of there. And the only thing to comment on would be like the larger themes that go on around it. But again, I don't really comment on those, because who am I to say what somebody should write? That's the problem with trying to deal with the larger themes. So much of the Dick Masterson critique was largely telling Eric July, you shouldn't have written that. You should have written this instead. Well, he doesn't want to write what you want to read. He wants to write something that would appeal to himself and others who are like-minded with him. I never had any problem with most of the story elements of ISOM #1. What I had a problem with were just the technical things that would go wrong. So, yeah, that's why I don't generally focus much attention on Marvel or DC unless they do something that's just absolutely outrageous, like when I did that Creeping Rainbow and Comics video about the Twink of Steel, when they literally called Superboy in ad copy the Twink of Steel. Oh my god, That's just not right. Let's see. John Apocalypse says 311. That was a funny date, and it is the year of the dragon, and the 11 letter is the alphabet is K. So 3K YAIRA release. No. Oh, God. Oh, how does that kind of stuff happen? And you see, that's exactly the kind of coincidence that I was basically playing off of on that in that video that I've got the 3 ways to Hitler in regarding ALPHACORE #1, where you had Joe Bennett had drawn either Joe Bennett drew it or the inker drew. Somebody told me that the inker might have been the one to have made the mistake on Holcomb's badge plate where it says Holcomb, and then instead of saying HOLCOMB, it said HOLCON18. And if you know anything about white supremacists, and unfortunately being on Gab, I know far too freaking much about them already. They have this numerology thing going where the 14 refers to the 14 words, which is like a white supremacist slogan, and N is the 14th letter of the alphabet, and then 18 is would correspond to the letters AH, which of course are Adolf Hitler's initials. So it's like, how does this get through? Where the hell are your editors? You can't let these kinds of things go through, especially when this guy's already been thrown off a Marvel book for supposed anti-Semitism. It's like, no. Oh, God. Let's see. John Apocalypse. This is the issue I have with the Rippaverse. It knocked a lot of the indie types out in the mainstream. Basically talking. I guess you're saying that that he's kind of sucked the oxygen out of the room is what it sounds like you're saying. And I think you're right to some degree. I mean, most of what look at what Ethan Van Sciver's doing. I mean, he's basically doing 5 nights a week, just bitching about Rippaverse and Eric July and all that kind of stuff, and he's getting paid for it. And then there's other people, of course, who wind up being the target of his critiques and stuff. And sometimes I think he's got good ideas. Sometimes I'm just like, really? You're spending this much amount of time talking about the color scheme of ALPHACORE #1 as if like that's the worst thing that's wrong with the book? I don't see that, but at the same time, here's this art that's all over the place, and you're loving it because it's all over the place. Bezzy says people come to you to be honest about the Rippaverse product, and I hope I am. I mean, the thing about Rippaverse is the worst thing in reading one of these comics, whether it's Comicsgate or Rippaverse or anything else, Marvel, DC, what have you. The worst thing for me is when I see what it could have been, because that's when I realize, oh, if you just done just a little bit, less flair here, or if you just said something a little bit different here, then this would be so much better of a book. And to see that, to be able to see it right there on the page and not be able to do anything about it because it's already out. It's already been distributed. It's done. It's in my hands. That is the kind of stuff where I feel so bad because I keep thinking if somebody had just, passed me a copy and said, here, what do you think of this? And I could have told them, and those changes could have been made before this thing went to print. How much better of a book would this be? And how much less work would I have to do for the video? Oh, because I tell you, sometimes like in the KOR-DRATH stuff, I mean, I just got to the point where I was like, okay, here's a punctuation thing. There's a punctuation thing. I'm just freaking sick of having to correct people's, punctuation and words and all that kind of junk. And I just said, there's like 8 or 9 different things in here. You need an editor. Find somebody to be your editor. So whether they take my advice or not, I have no idea. But I mean, that's the thing is when you see the stuff and you think, oh, it could have been, this first page could have been perfect if it just wasn't for that freaking comma that was like in the wrong place there. I hate that, and I just wish they would make more of a point to do better on those things. John Apocalypse says Rippaverse will become a shipping service. In its final legs, it will become RipX shipping service. Yes. I don't know why Shippaverse wasn't taken. Cyberfrog did sponsor a NASCAR, and after that race, there might be an influx of new backers and collectors from that market. Possibly. I mean, it's definitely an interesting foray into advertising. Let's see. Well, it isn't so much writing. I mean, at least have friends or a focus group that read it and critique it honestly to make it better. Yeah, it's hard though to find people who have that discernment. I mean, other writers are probably your best bet if you don't know any people with just straight up editorial skills. You know, one of the things I always think to myself is I probably could have been a decent comic book editor for like Marvel or DC. The only problem is that I have a it probably requires you to work a lot in close tandem with people, either over the phone or, you know, especially in these days, over the phone, over the internet, you know, constantly, you know, sending out messages saying, where's this, where's that. I don't know, given my more agreeable nature, whether I could have been pushy enough to be an editor, because I'm sure that's what it takes. I'm just almost certain that it takes a lot of disagreeableness to basically say, hey, we need your stuff. We need it now. Get it done, et cetera, et cetera. And same thing goes for just journalism in general. I remember back in high school, I used to think about taking journalism classes because that seemed like a really interesting job to have, to be a reporter of some sort. But the two things that got to me was I didn't want to be assigned to somebody's sports beat because I didn't give a crap about sports. And the other thing was I really would have preferred to be an editor rather than a writer. And I didn't know, probably it's probably true that you don't anymore have to go through the whole, you know, writer to editor path as far as newspapers and stuff goes. Maybe if you can just demonstrate the skills. I know that's not how, like, some of the most famous writers on comic books, they started as editors. I think Mark Waid was an editor before he became a writer. And what's his name? I met him at what is his name? Damn it. I met him at the thing. He wrote the Black Adam 6-issue series. Oh, I gotta look that up. Hold on a second. 6-issue Black Adam series. Black Adam number 6. No, that's not Chris Priest. I'm not talking about him. Black Adam, the Dark Age. That was it. It was, am I going to remember his name before I actually look it up? Probably not. Who's the writer? Peter Tomasi. Yes, Peter Tomasi did an excellent job on Black Adam, the Dark Age. That was the, what do you call it? That was the series that came out after 52. Where Black Adam had lost his powers because he didn't know what his magic word had been changed to other than Shazam. And what was really interesting about that, I probably told this story before, is that I actually got to meet him at a comic book convention. And give me just a second here. I got somebody trying to get a hold of me. Few minutes. Okay. So let's see. Peter Tomasi was at a comic book convention, and I asked him if he knew that Black Adam's word had already been chosen before he wrote his 6-issue series. And he wasn't aware of that, which was interesting. So, because that probably shows just how the communications were breaking down at DC. Because what was it? Countdown was what was going on at the time. Does anybody remember Countdown to Final Crisis, that wretched series that came out after 52, back when they thought that, you know, doing this 52 was actually something that, hey, we did it once, we may as well be able to do it again. Nope. Oh my God, what a freaking travesty that series was. And one of the things that was really bad about it was the fact that they basically supplanted the story that Peter Tomasi was about to tell. And so he just went and he wrote his story, and no one was none the wiser until I pointed it out to him that they'd already picked the new magic word and he used something else instead. Let's see. I don't even know how I got off on that. John Apocalypse says, yes, he attacks fans and people that talk against his work, and quite a few just left the scene entirely. Who are you talking about there? Is that Eric July, or is that Ethan? I don't know. Because I tell you, I mean, they're just the way that that Ethan just snaps at him. I mean, it's sad because he's almost getting reduced to the level of ankle biter at this point, which is just a terrible look. Comicsgate has top tier animations. They should be cycling characters and big viral promos to attract fans on X and YouTube, and that lack of coordination kills me. Yeah, I mean, marketing is important, and maybe start out offering being a proofer for other writers and then work into being an editor. Yeah, I mean, if I were, I mean, I already have a regular job, so you know, as far as doing extra work on the side, I can't really do that. It's at least not for money, I don't think, because I think there's probably something in my contract that says, you know, if you can't do moonlighting or stuff like that. But I mean, this is something that I have done, at least for some people. If anybody's watching this and says, you know, well, you know, maybe I can have Mike look at my script, look at my product. I've done that for a few people. There's a series called Cargo that I'm hoping is going to come out within the next couple of months that I provided some editorial input for, and so I'll be backing that whenever that comes out. And then I think there is one person I'm writing for. I actually have one story that I've delivered to him already, and there's one story that I need to finish up that I have not yet finished up yet, but it's in the same universe. And so when that collection of, I think it's going to be a short story collection, comes out, then I'll have a couple of entries in that. So so it's not like I'm entirely idle in the comics and fiction space, but yeah, right now I'm just not. I'm a little bit too tied up to try and dive in full bore. Let's see. Ethan only attacked after he got the compliance email from Eric, which did keep his mouth shut for like 4 months. Yeah, I think that's really. I think Ethan's madder at himself for those 4 months than he is at Eric July, actually, because you know, when I look at that night letter or whatever you call it, I just remember thinking to myself, well, he's just basically saying, you know, if you're going to have people on to talk shit about him, then he can have people on to talk shit about you. And, you know, that's just fair's fair. And Ethan, that must have just sent a chill down Ethan's spine that kept him quiet for about 4 months. And God, poor guy. So anyway, it's been about an hour. I'm going to go ahead and close out the live stream. Thanks all for attending, and I'm going to see if Ethan's back online yet to do another round of trashing Eric July, because let's face it, what else are you going to do? Watch election results? Watch the Super Tuesday stuff on CNN, or even Styx Hexenhammer? I mean, why would you waste your life on that when you could waste your life on seeing a grown man bitch about another grown man? All right, and thanks for the conversation, John Apocalypse. You were definitely the chattiest member of the forum today. So, all right. Thanks everybody for attending. I will talk to y'all later.